Financial markets in turmoil.
What are the root causes of the financial crisis?
The dollar losing value.
Heading for its biggest loss in nearly 3 decades.
Will Social Security even be there?
I don't know.
Buy or rent?
That's a very good question.
Interest rates.
I'm not so sure.
Where do you put your money?
I don't know.
Welcome to the show that answers your questions. This is Follow the Money Weekly with your host, economist, and best-selling author. Here's Jerry Robinson.
All right, friends, welcome to you all over the world. So glad that you're joining us here on Follow the Money Weekly. My name is Jerry Robinson, your host, your guide, leading you on an excursion to truth right here each and every week. You can find us online at ftmdaily.com. That stands for followthemoneydaily.com. Also got news this morning that our new Stock Trading University podcast is now broadcasting over on iHeartRadio. We got picked up by iHeart. I'm not real familiar with that brand, but I guess many people actually listen to podcasts on iHeart. So if you're interested in stock trading, check out our Stock Trading University podcast. You can find it there on our website or on iHeartRadio now. Well, a lot of things happening this week. We're going to be talking about several things. Kind of broke the show up into segments this week. And we have Tom Cloud here with an update on precious metals. Next week, by the way, we're going to be joined by the good doctor, Ron Paul. He'll be here to talk about several things. I won't fill you in entirely. In fact, I'll be recording the interview later this week, and we'll be playing it for you back next week. Very excited about that interview, and I know it'll be a good time. Well, lots of things happening this week. I want to point your attention to two stories that I think are fairly interesting. One very important to your finances, and that is Bloomberg is reporting Shanghai and Hong Kong linked to start in a week as China opens its markets. Here's the story. China said the Shanghai-Hong Kong exchange link will debut in a week, sparking equity rallies in both cities as the nation gives foreign investors, listen to this, unprecedented access to its $4.2 trillion stock market. Friends, those of you who have money in the markets, this is major, major news. In essence, the country of China has been a very closed economy overall, as you know, and it's been slowly opening things up. And now, for the very first time, foreign investors will be able to invest directly into Chinese companies that don't even have ADRs. And ADRs, by the way, are those American depository receipts. These are the types of companies that you can invest in that aren't based here, but they have certain ticker symbols that you're able to buy them on the U.S. stock exchange and still invest into the Chinese company. Well, now they're opening up the market to investors all around the world. This is the very first step, I guess, the next in a series of steps that China has taken to turn Shanghai into an international financial center. And so many people now are piling into Chinese stocks. We have also taken a move because next week is when this is going to begin. I'm a big believer in the Chinese story. I'm a big believer in the fact that over time we're going to see China continue to rise, especially their financial markets and their stock values. You know, see, China really hasn't had the kind of run that the United States has had since the 2008 economic crisis. 2009 was the big rally for China, but since that time, they've really been trending in a sideways fashion. So we really haven't seen that big pop in the stock market in China. And we believe that we're on the cusp of that right now. Therefore, we're taking positions. Now, there's several different ways to gain access to China as an investor. You can certainly invest in a multitude of different ETFs, exchange-traded funds. You can invest in Chinese-focused mutual funds. There's one I'm thinking of right now, the Matthews Asia Fund. I can't remember the ticker symbol off the top of my head, but it's a very popular one. There's many different ways to invest in China. You can also invest in specific Chinese stocks. But what I've done is I'm actually investing through the use of one particular ETF that I've done a lot of research on, and I'm going to be sharing that with our FTM Insiders. I already shared it with our Trigger Trade Pro subscribers earlier this morning. Our FTM Insiders, I'll be dropping out a little note to you in our daily trading idea for this new ETF. And so if you're looking for a way to gain access to China and you want to know what we're buying, you simply become one of our subscribers. Just go to ftmdaily.com/subscribe, sign up as low as $19 a month, and you can get access to all of our daily trading ideas, access to our ETF cheat sheet and our market barometer. We have so much stuff there. ftmdaily.com/subscribe if you're interested in learning about that. But I found one ETF in particular that I've had my eyes on now for some time. I'm going to be pulling the trigger. Actually bought some this morning. Going to be buying a little bit more later in the week as we prepare for a brand new advent in investing in China. Really big story. We have a link to this on today's show post. Also, another interesting headline that came out this week. ISIS wants to introduce its own currency, plans to bring back solid gold and silver dinar coins announced in Iraqi mosques. ISIS says that it plans on introducing its own currency to areas that it controls, and they want to bring back the old ancient Islamic currency known as the dinar. And the original dinar consisted of pure gold and pure silver. So they're wanting to introduce gold-backed currencies. I mean, this is really ironic when you think about it. They're taking their cues now from Alan Greenspan, who has been a long gold file, as well as Ron Paul, who we'll have on next week, who've been pushing for the idea of a gold-backed currency. Well, here you got it. ISIS beats everybody to the punch, wants to have a gold-backed currency. We have a link to the story on our post today. Really something. I mean, just the height of irony. You've really got to give it up for this. That story, of course, in addition to the fact that ISIS is selling barrels of oil for $20 a barrel. As you can imagine, many of the bad actors on the global economy are ready to buy oil for $20 a barrel from ISIS to promote and prop them up, unfortunately. A few other headlines we're watching this morning. One is the ongoing nuclear deal that's going on between Russia and Iran. More nuclear reactors to be built in Iran by Russia. Uranium and nuclear energy, by the way, has been beaten down. An analyst just came out last week saying that uranium prices should rebound to about $50 per pound over the coming months. This is causing a sharp spike in uranium prices and in uranium stocks, uranium mining stocks, things like Cameco Energy, ticker symbol CCJ, and then also some of the smaller uranium plays. I'm going to be sharing again my favorite uranium play. There's a little small penny stock that's a uranium play that I'll be giving out to our FTM insiders. It's one that I'm actually buying because I believe that we're going to see increasing uranium prices over the next several months, and probably at least over the next 18 to 24 months. We're going to see a rise in uranium prices. And you can always buy uranium itself through the futures markets, but sometimes the best way to play these crashing commodities as they rise back up higher in price through the boom and bust cycle is to buy these cheaper, well-run mining companies. And so uranium is one I have my eye on right now, and I'll be sharing my favorite stock with our FTM insiders here later this week. Also, big news about Russia and China. They're making another big deal. Remember the big natural gas deal they had, $400 billion deal that they signed? Well, they just added to it another $300 billion deal that was signed at the APEC meeting earlier this week. And so that's making news. But before we go any further, let's get a checkup on gold and silver prices from our good friend and precious metals advisor, Tom Cloud.
Follow the Money Weekly presents your precious metals market update. Here's Tom Cloud.
I must start the week off by talking about things that come across my desk over the weekend. We're seeing meetings in Europe that are going to drastically change America and the way investments are. And I think the first one is to see that we're now seeing that the Federal Reserves are discussing how to impose exit fees on bond funds to avert a potential run by investors. And the Fed's so concerned they now have a $10 trillion corporate bond market, and everybody knows that the bond market is right at the top. So they're talking about levying a fee on anybody that sells a bond or a bond fund. What makes that interesting, on February the 1st, Italy starts taxing across-the-border money transfers at the rate of 20%. So if I want to just move money to Italy, I've got to give 20% of it to the Italian government just for the right to move my money to their country. And in Poland, they've taken some radical steps to drop the debt-to-GDP ratio by 8 percentage points. And lo and behold, all they did was take pension funds from private citizens and make them buy government debt. And then when they got the debt ratio down, they issued more debt. So they used the people's pension fund as collateral to do it. And this revenue source, everybody in the world is looking for a revenue source And even the German Bundesbank got on the bandwagon over the weekend, and they're talking about a one-time wealth permanent tax on wealth would not be bad. And, of course, if you get a permanent tax on wealth, it's going to be on stocks, bonds, and cash, which even gives us more reasons to have a healthy percentage in metals, even though currently they're not doing anything. That's not the issue. The issue is long-term, being able to maintain your purchasing power and have that. So we then, on the back of that, see Pierre Lassonde, who is one of the largest investors in the world and used to be president of the World Gold Council, moved $10 million over the weekend, which he has to publicly disclose every time he does. So he moved $10 million of his own wealth in, saying that he thinks the silver-gold ratio, which is at the third all-time highest at 75-1, will be down to 20-1 in the next 2 years. So even if gold only went from $11.50 to $1,500, that would be $30 silver. So silver would double in that short period of time. So we now see big-name people that know what they're doing, putting their money where their mouth is, and it's very important. But we also saw David Hume's timely comment come out. Either the state ends public debt or public debt will end the state. And I don't think it's ever been more relevant than it is right now. We're at the last leg of this thing with the dollar going up because of the problems in Europe, and people are moving in the U.S. dollar strictly for short-term safety as oil hovers right around 80, and we're in this inflation squeeze where one signal looks like we're going to inflate, another looks like we're going to deflate. And then also over the weekend or on Friday, Richard Russell wrote the excellent piece about what we're talking about on the inflate and deflate, and it's just now QE4 is already being discussed, even though economic news coming out with unemployment at a 4-year low and all this, we're still saying QE4 is probably in the cards for next year, right after they quit the mortgage-backed security, drop that down at the end of last month. So nothing's changed except the rhetoric, and we do think gold and silver will bottom in the month of November, and I would be surprised the rest of my life to ever see gold and silver as low as they are when they do bottom. They may have already bottomed, I don't know, no one knows, but certainly I don't see gold at worst case scenario going below 1,080 or 1,100, and silver going below $14.50 to $15, and we're at $15.50 now, so we know it's still in a bargain. And I hate to keep reminding everybody of this, but it's worth mentioning is 2008 when silver went all the way down to right below $10, sat there, nobody wanted it, and then from November of 08 to November of 11, it went up to over $45. So in other words, it went up 4.5 times in only 3 years. I'm not predicting that kind of move, but I do think we'll see a double or a triple on silver when this debate of inflation, deflation plays out. And it's going to play out, definitely in my opinion, through higher inflation. I think we won't have deflationary pressures along the way while this money's being printed, but it certainly we feel like it's going to happen. And then lastly, just to say the palladium did take another dip when it hit 800 back into the 770s. And once again, I would say to buy it because I still think in the next 7 weeks it's going to go near 900, if not over. And by March, I think we'll see $1,000 palladium. So even though a lot of you have missed the boat this year with the 20% move we've already had, and it being the metal that's up this year, while gold is slightly down and silver's down a little over 10% for the year. So hopefully you can get all your questions answered and do your homework and be ready, because I do feel that that bottom is very close. If any of you want to talk or have any questions, I can be reached at 800-247-2812. That's 800-247-2812. And if any of you are interested in a precious metals IRA, we'll be happy to walk you through that. We're seeing a big demand for a lot of people rolling into self-directed precious metals IRAs. And then lastly, still if you're holding rare coins, you probably need to have a discussion with me. I've mentioned it during the last 14 years. Gold's gone from $250 to over $11.50, while the rare coins have not even doubled. So we're still up 4.7 times on gold. One of the rare coins have not even doubled in price, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. So if you're holding those, it'd be a good time to switch over while things are kind of quiet. And lastly, if you're not on our email blast, you can sign up for that at ftmdaily.com/gold or at the Precious Metals button, and we don't share your info with anyone. You can unsubscribe if you don't like it, but it's a good way to keep up with pertinent news and our pricing on that. With this week's Precious Metals Market Update, this is Tom Cloud signing out.
Hey friends, this is Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly. Recently, we have been receiving many emails from our listeners commenting on the great help they're getting from our precious metals expert, Tom Cloud. Gold and silver are excellent hedges against the growing threat of coming U.S. inflation. Who's your gold guy? Make it Tom Cloud. With over 30 years experience with precious metals, Tom will answer all of your questions. Don't buy your gold and silver through some call center and pay inflated prices. Call my good friend Tom Cloud and speak directly with him and get all of your questions answered. For a limited time, Tom is offering free shipping and insurance on every gold and silver purchase made by our listeners. Call 800-247-2812. And when you do, tell him that Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly sent you, and he'll throw in that free shipping and insurance on your entire order. Call your gold guy, Tom Cloud, right now for the very best deals on gold and silver coins. 800-247-2812. That is 800-247-2812. Well, it appears that winter is already upon us here in the United States. According to weather forecasts, a wave of frigid and in some cases sub-zero temperatures will begin spreading across the U.S. this week. All of this talk about cold weather really makes me happy that my wife and I have further cut our dependence upon the grid for heat. We live in a very rugged and mountainous region known as the Boston Mountains of northwest Arkansas. And many of you know our story. We were living in Houston, Texas for some time, very large city, 4 to 6 million people, maybe even more. And we decided, just felt it in our gut, that it was time to get out of the city and into a less populated area, lower population density, and also an area where we could really begin to get off of the grid. Now, this year we've invested in wood-burning stoves, which are much cheaper than burning the propane, which our house was set up to use for heat. And the wood-burning stoves actually have a large flat surface cooking area on top, which allows us to heat and cook food quickly, even without power. We've also built a large garden with a growing variety of fruits and vegetables. And we also are raising chickens for their eggs. If you've never had farm fresh eggs, you just haven't lived. You've got to try them. My next major project is to capture rainwater in order to cut our water bill. After all, watering a big garden takes a lot of water. And to do that, I plan on placing a few large 275-gallon caged water tanks alongside one of the buildings on the property, and it will capture the rainwater as it rolls off the roof. Now, we're going to attach a custom spout to the building gutters, and we'll be able to save a lot of money that way every single year on our water bill to water our garden. Now, moving out into the middle of nowhere in the mountains was a big step for my wife and I. As many of you know, as I told you, we decided to begin getting off of the grid about a few years ago. The process began with first identifying an area of the country where we wanted to live. Several different factors went into making that decision, but chief among them, climate and location from a major metropolitan area. Wanted to make sure we weren't too terribly close to a major metropolitan area, something that had like 1 million people or more. We wanted to stay away from those areas, at least one tank of gas away from one of those areas. It may sound absurd now to some, but I truly believe that very hard days lie ahead for our country. Through its aggressive foreign policy, America has made so many enemies over the last several decades. Now, with the rise of the BRICS nations, which include Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and with the Middle East in a greater mess than at any time in recent memory, the U.S. faces many great global challenges. In recent months, Russia has been testing our military might. Meanwhile, China has been beefing up its military where it counts by specifically targeting and exploiting all of the weakest spots of America's military strength. But it's not just some hot war that many are concerned about. There is already major warfare taking place in cyberspace. We have already seen a major spike in cyber attacks against Western financial institutions and top technology companies. In fact, 4 of the top 5 largest cybersecurity breaches have occurred just over the last 12 months in the United States. So this trend is not changing. But it's not just the banks and the tech companies that are dealing with the increasing cyber threats. A recent congressional review found that the U.S. electric grid is already under continuous cyber assault by bad actors in Russia, China, Iran, and other nations. In fact, a congressional commission estimated, and this is hard to believe, and this is coming straight to you from the House of Representatives website, that within 12 months of a national blackout, completely blacked out across the country, which many of our top intelligence analysts are telling us could happen if the grid is attacked in just the right way. If that were to happen, within 12 months of a national blackout, 90% of the American population, according to this congressional commission, would die from disease, lack of food and resources, and major societal change. Now it's unlikely that the entire national electric grid would go completely out. But it's better to be safe than sorry. With winter on the way, now is the best time to begin creating a plan for your family. Do you have a plan for if the electric grid goes out in your area, if it fails this winter? One of the quickest and simplest solutions is to buy a gas-powered generator. Don't wait until you need one, because by then the prices will likely spike higher and supplies will be usually limited by that time. You can also stock up on the foods that you enjoy by buying 1 extra or maybe 2 extra of each of them throughout the winter months. This is especially important if you live in a highly populated area. As the old proverb says, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions, but the simple goes on blindly and suffers the consequences. Friends, these are no doubt dangerous times, so now is the time for those who are wise to take precautions. There are few people in the world who perhaps have a better view of global events in real time than the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Today, that role is filled by former U.S. Senator Chuck Hagel. I'm going to play you a clip of a question that was directed at Secretary Hagel, along with his response. Hagel's answer is long and drawn out with lots of rambling. However, the first part of his answer is what I'm going to play for you. It's revealing as he once again points to the current creation of a new world order. Roll the tape.
Could you give us a brief big picture of how dangerous you think this time of history is? Is it chronic annoyance or is it actual danger? And when will the United States see some end to these wars, especially the now 13-year war in Iraq, Afghanistan?
I think we are living through one of these historic defining times. I think we are seeing a new world order, post-World War II, post-Soviet Union implosion, being built. Many questions about, first, among the American people and our leaders, what's the role of America in this new world that is evolving? Should we have a role? What is appropriate?
So Secretary Hagel says that we are seeing or witnessing, living through a new world order. Now, much of this new world order is simply the post-U.S. dollar order. Countries like China and to a lesser extent India have risen in economic dominance, and this economic power is slowly morphing into political power. Political power obviously being much more effective in this current environment. China's political power was on full display this week at the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting, where China announced a major expansion of its recent $400 billion natural gas deal, which was the largest in history. Now, with this latest deal, China will be consuming much of Russia's natural gas, bumping Germany out of the first place position that it's held for some time. And all of those new sales are expected to take place in yuans and rubles, not U.S. dollars. This is big because China and Russia are in essence dropping the dollar from their bilateral trade. This has been going on now for some time, but it's a continued stick in the eye to the United States and to the U.S. economy, as the economy here in the United States tries to continue its expansion without the continued demand of its currency in many, many places around the world. And this trend is just going to continue as central banks around the world continue to lower their amount of dollar reserves and perhaps begin raising reserves of other currencies to make the entire global economy a bit more balanced. And you see, it is this balance that is part of the New World Order that Chuck Hagel is referring to. It's the balance. We have had a very unbalanced economy ever since the Bretton Woods Agreement, when the United States, they became the chief currency in the global economy and really gained a lot from that. But that is, as we know, breaking down. And countries like China, now Russia, India, and many other countries around the world are stepping up and trying to improve their lot. And as they do, it is coming at the expense of the U.S. economy. Now, there's another important aspect of this New World Order that has much to do with not just the United States and the dollar and China, but with the Middle East, especially Iraq. But we'll save that topic for a future show. If you were to ask most Americans today if the United States has been a close friend and ally of Israel, most would answer with a resounding yes. This is especially true of evangelical Christians who believe that America's foreign policy in the Middle East should be driven and even dictated by Israeli interests. Evangelicals often side with political candidates who promise to look out for Israel and to stand up for the Jewish state. But is there any solid evidence that America's foreign policy measures and actions in the Middle East have been guided by anything but upholding and protecting the petrodollar system? I would strongly suggest that the answer is no. Why is this important? Because I believe that the American population, and evangelicals in particular, have been hoodwinked by the pro-Israel chatter that pours out of most of our political leaders' mouths. Instead of being a true friend and ally to Israel, I believe that America has cleverly used its relationship with the Jewish state as a cover for its military adventurism in the Middle East, designed to prop up its failing petrodollar system. Still, many Americans, including most evangelicals, buy the hype being pumped out of Washington's political spin rooms. But if you turn off the corporate-controlled mainstream media even for just a day and speak to the real inhabitants of the Middle East, a very different story emerges. So let us consider whether Washington has actually been a true friend of Israel over the last several decades by asking ourselves a few important questions. Number one, would a true friend belittle your autonomy and self-determination by denying your right to defend yourself, all because they have made backroom deals with your enemies for financial gain? Well, obviously no. And yet this is exactly what Washington has done, as it has condemned virtually every attempt by Israel to defend its rightful territory. When Israel seeks to defend her territory, America always rushes in to prevent it. Have you ever found yourself asking why America and other Western interests who benefit from continued good relations with oil-producing nations within the Middle East urge Israel to restrain herself when she is clearly under attack? Again, the truth is always found when you follow the money. As you may recall, part of the petrodollar agreement requires that the United States guarantee protection for Middle Eastern oil-producing nations from the threats specifically imposed by the Jewish state and its military. And here's another question to consider. Would a true friend seek to make you dependent upon financial aid and then give 4 to 5 times more financial aid to your sworn enemies? The answer is clearly no. And yet this is exactly what America has done to Israel in the name of friendship. For example, Egypt and Afghanistan are expected to take in as much U.S. foreign aid dollars as Israel in 2015 alone. Massive amounts of U.S. foreign aid dollars also flow to Turkey, Pakistan, Iraq, Jordan, the West Bank, and Gaza, all of which are well-known sworn enemies of the Jewish state. So how can Washington give away free taxpayer money, not including weapons, to the enemies of its so-called best friend and still keep a straight face? While many evangelicals clamor at the feet of those leaders who profess support for Israel, how many have ever stopped to truly identify what that support actually looks like? I would suggest far too few. The Jewish identity, as expressed in Zionism, is one that is deeply rooted in autonomy and self-determination. It is my own personal belief that America's so-called support for Israel has served as a crafty cover for maintaining a military presence within the region, all to protect our economic and geopolitical interests. And support for Israel is how Washington sells this plan to the American people. America has attempted to play both sides of this Middle East game for far too long, and it has used the corporate-controlled mainstream media to control the American public for decades. They have kept us ignorant of the truth. Keeping the Middle East inflamed and destabilized has been a stated goal of Western interests for decades. This is the name of the game when your goal is empire. And empires do not have friends. They have subjects. It's time for Americans to wake up and realize that we need to stop listening to the flapping jaws of the politicians and to the derelict corporate-controlled mainstream media. And instead, we should simply follow the money. Well, friends, that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you so much for choosing to allow us into your life each and every week. And as always, I leave you with this final word, this time taken from the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 16, where it says, "How much better to get wisdom than gold, and good judgment than silver." Friends, wise words and wise thoughts are more valuable than anything on earth. So in all the things that you strive for on this earth, let wisdom and knowledge be among the chief things that you desire. Just something to think about. Remember, friends, when you want the truth about the global economy, just follow the money. Have a safe and prosperous week, and we'll see you right back here next Tuesday. Until then, God bless.
All of the information contained on Follow the Money is strictly for informational and educational purposes. The views and opinions of our guests and sponsors, including Tom Cloud and Jay Peroni, are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of FTMDaily.com or Robinson Media Group, LLC. Jerry and Jennifer Robinson do hold their insurance licenses and may offer consulting on life insurance and fixed retirement income products. Jennifer Robinson is an investment advisor representative with Faith-Based Investor, LLC. Remember, never do your financial planning through podcast or radio. It's your money. Be wise. Do your due diligence and always consult a trusted financial professional.